real day off, but do they, actually
Go to a ceremony.
go to a ceremony or to the,
Veteran
to the
cemetery
veteran,
or to visit.
No,
yeah.
what are they doing? It's the
Cookout.
cookout to summer, and they're grilling up burgers and dogs.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm trying to think, No, I went to Catholic school, the public schools when I was a kid, because so many of them were used for election, for polls. Public schools always got the day off.
Well, they closed, what was it?
Well,
the school.
in
Memorial
November
will
now,
oftentimes.
we've gotten the teachers, we've gotten them to do their one of their professional days in November.
Mhm.
But the primary is September 8th.
Right.
They're no sooner open than we're going to be invading them. So they can't close for that
Yeah,
day. But,
yeah.
yeah.
But we were always jealous of that's the one day we were jealous of the public schools, was because they had election day off. Of course, we were then happy we were going to Catholic school because we always got the day after Halloween off.
The day after Halloween, because that's All Saints Day,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was fair trade-off, I
There you
guess.
go.
30 seconds, quiet on set.
America, we stand for freedom. Though freedom is never really free, we yearn and strive for government, protecting our liberty.
Good evening and welcome to Your Right to Know by the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. My name is Mary Lotze and I will be your co-host for this evening's show. Joining me in co-hosting duties tonight is my friend, treasurer of the Fitchburg Republican City Committee and former mayoral candidate for the city of Fitchburg, Attorney Andrew Couture. Hi, Andrew.
Hi,
Thank
how
you
you
for
doing?
being with us.
Thank you for having me back.
Joining Andrew and I tonight is a very special guest who's been with us once before, and we're going to have an evening of chock full of information, and that's City Clerk for the City of Fitchburg, Anna Farrell. Thank you so much, Anna, for joining Andrew and I tonight.
Thank you.
It's
Thanks for-
wonderful to have you back.
Great.
For our viewers, this is a very special show because although Anna is the city clerk in the city of Fitchburg, the information provided tonight will hold true for the entire state of Massachusetts. Every city, every town will have much of the same information that we're going to cover. And what we're going to cover specifically, so we'll jump right in because it's a big topic, is the whole early voting. This new idea that people will have an extended period of time to vote in the presidential election. First time for Massachusetts, Anna. So let's get right into it. What is early voting and why is Massachusetts doing it?
Well, early voting is just that. Voters will have an opportunity to vote early in the November 8th presidential election for 10 days from October 24th,
October 24th?
which is a Monday,
Okay.
until the Friday before the election, which is November 4th. The legislature passed a special act in 2014, which takes effect this year, authorizing early voting along with some other changes to the election law. But this is the real biggie out of that piece of legislation.
I know other states have had what we call early voting or extended voting for a number of years. Why did Massachusetts just decide to sort of join the 21st century? Was there pressure put on the state, or is it to get rid of absentee voting, or what? Why did they all of a sudden decide to do it?
Well, I think it was an idea that had been discussed for quite a while, and they just did it. With the presidential election coming up, they did it, and now here we are.
What is the difference between early voting and absentee voting? Many of our viewers probably have been on vacation. They've already gone south for the winter period. They are familiar with an absentee ballot.
Right.
What is the difference between early voting and absentee voting?
The primary difference is that you don't need a reason to vote early. Absentee voting, you have 3 reasons you can qualify. You can be out of your city or town for the day. You can be confined to a medical facility and unable to get out. Or you can have a religious observance that day that prevents you from being at the polls. Technically, you've got to meet one of those 3 criteria in order to qualify legally for an absentee ballot. We know that a lot of people vote absentee that don't truly qualify. Now we have early voting, and any voter can vote early.
What are the times that people will be able to go to the polls? So you said it's going to start on a Monday. Weekends, evening hours, how is that going to work?
The statute requires early voting to be held in any municipality during the hours of the city or town clerk's office. Anything beyond that is optional. It's boiling down for a lot of us to funding because we've not been provided any funding to take this on. And also balancing all the tasks that lead up to election day. The 2 weeks prior to an election are very, very busy in an election office. So we're really having to try and figure out how we're going to incorporate this with all of our normal duties. In Fitchburg, what we're going to do is our normal business hours are 8:30 to 4:30. But we really want to go along with the spirit of this and provide some after-hours opportunity for people to come and vote who might be out of town.
Excellent.
So I've spoken with the mayor, and for 2 weeks only, we are actually going to alter the official hours of the city clerk's office on Monday and Tuesday, both of those weeks. We're going to open at 10 o'clock in the morning and close at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And those are going to be the early voting hours. We're going to be in the office earlier than that.
Sure.
But officially, we're going to be 10 to 6. So we'll be Monday and Tuesday, 10 to 6.
Of both weeks?
Of both weeks. And then Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 8:30 to 4:30.
And no weekend hours?
We are not doing weekends
Okay.
in Fitchburg, no.
So now, just to clarify, because I said this will pertain to every city and town in the state of Massachusetts or Commonwealth, that will depend on one's own city or town?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Andrew, I know you have some things you'd like to ask Anna, too.
A couple of things that I have. Do you believe that the ballots and the voting process will be maintained in the utmost of security to ensure there's no voter tampering? I know there's been a lot of discussion within the past few years of voter fraud. What kind of precautions are taken with this early voting?
Well, first of all, let me just say absolutely there'll be no tampering with the ballots in Fitchburg. It's going to be a very controlled environment. The location is going to be at 166 Boulder Drive, actually in the warehouse area, just on the other side of the wall from my office. We're not going to be out in, for instance, grocery stores and libraries and more public places, which some of the bigger cities and towns are. I know Worcester is planning on being all over the place. We're going to be in a very controlled environment. It's going to be staffed. There will be a staff person stationed at the ballot box continuously, and the ballot box will be locked. The only person who's going to have a key is the site supervisor and myself. And those ballots are going to be in envelopes, just like absentee ballots. The early voter will check in and then get their ballot and an envelope. They'll vote, and then they will put their ballot into the box. And periodically throughout the day, I'll be going over there to the other side of the wall, getting the ballots, bringing them into my office so we can key in the names into the computer, and then the ballots will be stored by precinct, just like we do with absentee ballots, and then delivered to the polls.
Now, when you say check in, what do you mean when the voters check in to vote?
We've devised a process for early voting It's going to be, it's sort of a hybrid between what you experience when you go to the polls and what you might experience as an absentee voter. People, now this is going to be for every precinct in the city in one location. So we had to think of a way that we could get a list of 23,000 voters that wasn't terribly cumbersome for the poll workers. So what we've done is, and this has all been approved by the Secretary of State's office, we're going to have 2 tablets with a PDF file that we will pull from the state voter registration system on the Friday before early voting starts, and it's going to be on the tablet. And our IT department developed an application where you just type in the name, and out of those 23,000 voters, the screen will zoom into the voter that you're looking for. So that's how we're going to identify that you are indeed a voter in Fitchburg. And then you'll be directed to your table corresponding to your ward, and you'll get your ballot along with an envelope. And then you will go to a booth and you will vote. You will then put your ballot inside an envelope and put your envelope inside the ballot box and leave.
Now, what another question that I had is registering to vote. How has that changed with the early voting? Is there a specific time? I mean, you have this huge, well, not really huge, but definitely an expanded period of time where people are going to be voting. Has the time changed to register to vote?
It has not, and it's going to be challenging, certainly, because the last day to register to vote in the presidential election is October 19th.
Wow.
Wow.
Early
That is
voting
early.
starts October 24th. So guess who's working that weekend?
Overtime.
Yeah, no, I wish. Yeah, we're going to be preparing all those lists for early voting. They all have to be ready first thing Monday morning.
Yeah.
Very, very short window of time between the last day to register to vote, and they flood in for a presidential election.
Sure.
I bet they do.
Yeah.
I bet they do.
Yeah.
Especially this one,
Yeah.
being so volatile.
Right. So what's nice about having the early voting site right on the other side of the wall, literally from my office, is if you walk up to that check-in table and we've not captured your voter registration, let's say you came in, you went to Boston to register to vote, and the paper hasn't actually gotten itself to Fitchburg, but you are an on-time voter registration, they'll just send them to our office and we will process them there. So that's the beauty of having it right next door.
Now, when you're talking about the checking in, do people have to show like their driver's license to prove that they have some sort of a residence in Fitchburg?
No, as you know, we do not have voter ID in Massachusetts required, only certain circumstances.
Now, why do some people, show their ID in some states, but it seems to be thought of to be discriminatory by the judicial system in Massachusetts, and overall nationwide, there is a question about it being discriminatory.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, each state has its own election laws. In Massachusetts, there are 2 reasons why you might need to show your ID when you go to the polls. The first is if you registered to vote for the first time in Massachusetts by mail, and you did not show, and you did not send a copy of your ID with you in the mail. You would need to show that when you get to the polls. The other reason you need to show ID is if you're on the inactive voting list, and there's an affirmation process that the voter has to go through, and they have to show ID as part of that. Why some states feel it's discriminatory, I don't know. That's a whole legal question. I'm not prepared to go down that road.
I'll get back to you on that. But yeah, in fact, I've actually had to, for some reason I fell on the inactive roll and I had to show my ID and whatnot, but it was very comforting for them to actually say, okay, you are who you are.
Right.
Go ahead and vote.
Well, we're going to get to that, but people who move to a new address or something like that, sometimes will have that. They'll fall off the voter rolls.
And I think that's what happened to me because I
Right.
moved.
You moved,
Now, typically, who can vote in Mass? That's a big question, especially when you're dealing with voter fraud. Who can register to vote and vote in Massachusetts?
18 years old, United States citizen. We do not ask for identification when someone comes in person to register to vote. They do, we do take the last 4 digits of Social Security number, and that is cross-checked in the voter registration system. Incarcerated felons cannot register to vote or vote. However, once they are no longer incarcerated, they can do both. So 18 years old and U.S. citizen.
Okay.
So nobody ever asked if you've, that's not part of the questions, if you've had a record, because just today I was listening to Governor Terry McAuliffe of Virginia, and they're letting, but maybe it's incarcerated.
It's while they're incarcerated.
While they're incarcerated, he's
While they're
allowing them to vote. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, does that vary state by state? Because I've heard,
Yes.
yeah, okay, that's
Yes.
what I thought. Now, how many registered voters are there in Fitchburg?
About 23,000.
And what's the percentage of those belonging to any individual political party?
About 60% unenrolled, meaning independent. I hate to use that word. But
That's another question
yes,
that I have,
it
but
is,
we'll get
yeah.
to that.
Unenrolled, meaning not affiliated with any particular party, otherwise known as independent, about 60%. About 30% Democrat, about 10% Republican.
And is this pretty typical of the political parties in the state?
I think so, yeah.
Now, you talked about the independents. Now, there was a little bit of a confusion recently because I guess there was a new political party called the United Independent Party.
Yes.
How has that, confused people? Because, I mean, people say they're independent, meaning they don't want to be involved
Right.
in any type of political
Right.
party. But now there's a political party
Right.
called the United Independent
Right.
Party.
Very confusing for voters, very confusing. I don't know the process for coming up with a name for political parties, but if I had a vote, that wouldn't be one, United Independent Party. Very confusing. The Secretary of State's office did actually send out a mailing to all newly registered United Independent Party members before the presidential primary, letting them know that, hey, you might have meant to be unenrolled and you might have, signed up for this party by mistake. And we did get quite a few calling and saying, oh yeah, I meant to be unenrolled, so I need to switch my party affiliation.
So switching your party affiliation
Yeah.
isn't a difficult task, is that what you?
No.
Okay.
No,
Well, actually, that's another question that I have. Obviously, there's been a huge swell of interest in this political election.
Yeah.
With new voters, presumably due to Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, and voter turnout was huge during the primary. Have you seen party registrations going up, especially in Fitchburg, if not statewide? And did this change significantly since this primary?
I did check on that because I knew you were going to ask that question. I looked at the number of new voter registrations from last December up to about last week. It was about 2,000 new registered voters, which is pretty good for Fitchburg.
In Fitchburg
In
alone?
Fitchburg alone.
Well, that's incredible.
Most precincts,
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
The voter
Yeah,
turnout anyway.
right.
Yeah,
That's
I thought
pretty
that was
incredible.
high.
Yeah.
I thought that was
2,000
high.
more.
And the majority of those were unenrolled,
Really? Okay.
which is not surprising.
Have you seen people change party affiliations?
We
Like
have.
go from unenrolled to
We
Republican?
have, but I wouldn't say that it's been huge.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And if people have questions, if they're registered in Fitchburg, even where to go vote, who can they call to verify where they can go and vote?
Well, before they even call, they can check online. They can go to mass.gov, the elections division. There's a whole application built right into the Secretary of State's website to check to see if they're registered to vote and where they vote.
Really?
Yes.
Is that new?
It's been around for a few years, and if you go to the City Clerk's webpage, my page, I have a link on there
Oh, good.
to go right and check. Or if you're not computer savvy or you just want to pick up the phone, you can call my office as well.
I obviously, some people in our viewing audience recognize me from being a poll worker at Ward 3, Memorial Middle School, and that's one of the largest wards in
Yes, it
Fitchburg.
is.
And we had a lot of confusion with that United Independent Party,
Yeah.
even despite the fact that the Secretary of State's office sent out that letter, hopefully to clarify the confusion between those who refer to themselves as independent
Right.
and the United Independent. But we did have a lot of confusion on that. So, fortunately, in a presidential election, that type of thing doesn't happen because it's one ballot.
It's one ballot,
And
right.
you get to vote.
Right.
But what isn't one ballot is what's coming up very soon. On Thursday, September 8th, we're going to have a primary in Massachusetts. We don't have a lot happening. I do
No, we
have a
don't.
picture of a ballot. I don't know if it will really come through well on our screen.
Oh, there it is.
We have it, but whether it'll translate well to TV, I'm not really sure. But the primary, the state primary election is going to be Thursday, September 8th, not Tuesday.
Right, it's on a Thursday.
And that's because of the Labor Day and is that?
Well, actually, it was originally scheduled for later in the month, but there was a conflict with a Jewish holiday.
Oh, okay.
So they had to choose another date. And they went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They were thinking about Tuesday, but that being the Tuesday after Labor Day, it created all kinds of issues. So they finally settled on a Thursday, which is not unprecedented. We did have a Thursday election a few years back.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
Since there's not a lot happening in this election, there's really only one contested election.
That's correct.
And that's on the Democratic ticket.
Right.
So please just explain a ballot, because we will have many new voters coming to the presidential election. Probably won't come out on the for this primary, but for the presidential. When people see a ballot, how do they complete a ballot? It sounds like a very basic question, but being a poll worker,
Yeah.
I understand that people get very confused when it comes to completing a ballot. Could you just go through how one would complete a ballot, circling versus making
Sure.
a big check,
Sure.
Xing, and how do you do a write-in? If somebody wants to write in a name.
Okay. Well, the most important thing to do is to read the instructions. It will tell you how many to vote for.
Oh, that's always a
That's
big one.
really important
Yes.
because, for instance, if you have 3 seats and it says vote for no more than 3, and you have 6 candidates, and people just keep coloring away all the way down, no one gets a vote.
That's city council we will have that happen.
Those will be blanks because you have overvoted that race. So that's my first piece of advice: is please read the directions. If it says vote for 1, vote for 1, or not more than 1. Secondly, be sure to use the marker that we provide you in the voting booth. And be careful with the marker and color in the oval and don't color anything else in, particularly around the edges of the ballot, because those are all timing marks to do with the electronic voting system. So just color in your oval and leave it at that. If you would like to do a write-in, just write in the name of the person
There's always a
that
space
you want
under.
to write. Yeah, yeah. And if it's vote for 3, there will be 3 spaces. So you could vote. You could write in 3 different people. However many seats there are, there will be that many write-in lines. It's not necessary for you to also color in the write-in oval, but it is helpful. Because it, as you know,
As a poll worker, it's very helpful.
yeah, very helpful. If you color in the write-in oval, it kicks it over into a different section of the ballot box, which is, you collect those and you know that those are write-in ballots. Although, as you also know, you have to go through every single ballot and check for write-ins.
Right.
Every write-in is counted.
Right, to let our viewers know, when you
Yes.
write down Mickey Mouse, I get to count Mickey Mouse at the end of the
Yes.
night.
Yes.
And as it starts nearing later and later
You
in the
get
night,
tired
I've
of
lost my
counting Mickey
humor.
Mouse. Yes. Right. Right.
Andrew, would you like to, one of the things that we were wondering about is the, I'm responding to the city census.
Oh, yes.
That, of all things that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
really from a poll worker's perspective, please discuss the importance of the city census?
Absolutely. The city census is required by law every year. Every city and town has to send out a census, and it is our way of checking in with the voters to make sure that you still live in the city and are still entitled to vote in the city. You send it back to us. Yes, I still live here. That's great. We scan it. You remain on the active voting list so that when you arrive at the polls to vote on election day, you are on the check-in list of active voters. If you do not send it back to us, we don't know if you're still living in the city or not. So we are required, this is not just something that we do, we are required by law to move your name to what's called the inactive list. And what that does is when you come to the check-in table on election day, your name won't be there. So you're forced to go visit the warden, who will have the inactive list, and you have to go through an affirmation process. You have to fill out paperwork, you have to show ID, and tell us, yeah, I still live in Fitchburg. A lot of times it's when people move. Sometimes people just don't like to fill out the city census. They feel it's an invasion of privacy and they don't want to fill it out. Well, then when you go to vote, you're going to have to go through the affirmation process when you get there. But it's not just for voter registration, although that's the real reason why. There's a lot of other reasons why people need to prove residency. And even if you're not a registered voter, send the city census back in, you'll still be in the system as a resident. And if at some point you need to prove residency, we can give you a certificate that says that, but only if you have told us that you live in the city.
We are getting kind of to the end of our show, so I just want to ask another couple of questions for our viewers. Ballot questions. I know there's been a lot of discussion this year about ballot questions. Do you know how many there's going to be?
I think at least 3.
Will it be a double page? Wasn't it 4 years ago we had 2-page
At least.
that voters had to go through, back side of one and the front side of another?
At least. And of course, as you know, Fitchburg is bilingual ballots. So those questions will be in English and Spanish. So we'll have at least one ballot double-sided with a second ballot, at least. I wouldn't be surprised if we see 2 ballots double-sided.
Do you know what the ballot questions are? I know one is the marijuana question, whether we want recreational marijuana.
I believe the other one is for charter schools.
Charter schools.
I'm not sure what the third one is.
Okay. Will the Secretary of State's office give us one of those nice little flyers?
Information,
that come around?
Yes, voter information booklets.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it's legal to bring those into the voting booth with you, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I have a lot of people that they'll say I can't do it, it's not legal to, you know, to bring the book in.
I think there's actually a little cheat sheet in there.
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah, that you can do your homework at home, and then when you get to the booth, you just
take it
copy
in with
down.
you
Yep.
and things like that,
Yep.
which makes it very easy. So as we finish tonight, if you could just go over again the early voting dates
Yep.
and the last day to register to vote for the
Yes.
presidential election,
Yep.
I think everyone would appreciate that.
October 19th, which is a Wednesday, is the last day to register to vote. If you would like to register to vote in person, my office will be open until 8 o'clock in the evening. Online voter registration is up until midnight on that day. Early voting will begin on Monday, October 24th, Monday through Friday, that week, as well as the second week, and will end on Friday, November 4th. And then the big day, presidential election, is November 8th.
Which is of course a Tuesday, and
Right.
the polls will not, or early voting will not extend to that Monday before Election Day.
No, it will
stops at
not.
Friday at 4.
It stops, early voting stops on Friday at 4:30.
4:30.
Absentee voting goes until Monday at noon. So if you find out all of a sudden over the weekend you're going to be gone on Tuesday, you can still vote absentee
And
up to noon.
questions that anyone has could call.
978-829-1820.
Anna, you have given us so much information, and I know our viewers will find this very informative. This is a big change.
It is a big change. Yeah.
For your sake, for my sake as a poll worker, an election worker, I hope many people take advantage of it and really do come out and vote early during that time period.
I hope so. Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Very nice. And we thank you for watching Your Right to Know and sitting in with the Fitchburg Republican City Committee tonight. As we leave you, we want you to know and remember that your local city or town Republican Committee is the only grassroots organization that supports and holds dear your liberty, your constitutional rights, and your conservative values. We encourage you to join the Fitchburg Republican City Committee or any Republican City Committee. Why? Because to us, the GOP stands for growth, opportunity, and prosperity for all people, and because we always stand for freedom. Thank you and good night.
America, we stand for freedom. So let us all unite to yearn and strive for our republic that reflects our values, that preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might, that reflects our values and preserves our rights, and goes forth in power